Hello and welcome. This is rooflemonger, my friends. There's a little bit of a trend going on in fighting games lately. Can you call it out? Do you know what it happens to be? Well, it looks like tag games are back. And not only they're back with a vengeance. So I'm sure you know the old saying, when it rains, it pours. So here we are, fighting games. Fighting games are not a larger genre of gaming. We're basically a smaller genre these days, right? It's not the 90s no more. We're doing better though. Last few years we've been doing really good. And then we have tag fighting games, which are a subgenre of this smaller genre. And now all of a sudden we have 4 tag fighters in active development, 2 of which have only been announced in the last few days. So what's going on? How did we get here? How did we go from like 2XKO, which we've known about for some years, and then we had Hunter Nen Impact announced last year, and now Marvel Tokon and Invincible versus just being released in the last week or so. So what's going on? Let's talk about it. So first off, why is this happening? Well, fighting games are back in a big way, right? Fighting games are very popular. Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, the core main franchises have all been doing very well for themselves recently, except for Mortal Kombat. It had good sales, but apparently that's not enough. We've covered it in other videos. But yeah, so people want a piece of that fighting game pie, and fairly enough, because there's room to grow. And it's hard to make a one-on-one fighting game. If you make a traditional 1 versus 1 fighter, 2D fighter, you're up against Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, which no matter how you do, you're always going to lose that fight. You can make a plenty good game, but you're never going to outsell Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, right? So that can be intimidating. And as far as 3D fighters, well, other than Tekken, the genre of 3D fighters has been mostly dead, but this is part of the revival here. So we have the new Virtual Fighter that was announced a while ago last year, and that is coming back after being dormant for a very, very long time. Since when it comes to 3D fighters, the only real option was Tekken, therefore there's room to, put yourself in and take some of that market share. Not tons of competition, especially with Tekken having a lot of controversies lately. It seems like a safe bet to go out and try again, especially with Virtua Fighter being the game that invented the 3D fighter genre. Now look at tag fighters. Tag fighters don't even have that. They don't even have, a Tekken. Tag fighters basically, quote unquote, died alongside Dragon Ball fighters. So Marvel Infinite came out to mixed success. Let's put it that way. I'm the biggest Marvel Infinite fan on the internet. This channel started because of Marvel Infinite, but Dragon Ball fighters came out and sort of ate its lunch. And then Dragon Ball fighters went very, very strong for a number of years until a combination of very poor planning, very bad patches, and cataclysmic mismanagement by Bandai Namco. Yes, Arc System Works made the game, but Bandai Namco was the publisher. They made all the shots. They made all the decisions. So ArcSys is pretty blameless. They made a pretty good game, and all the problems come from the Bandai Namco end of things. And thus, Dragon Ball FighterZ kind of had the worst death of a fighting game, right? It just sort of faded away. So no big cinematic ending, I guess, like you could say for MK1, or like, okay, this game's over because the new game's out. Just Dragon Ball FighterZ just sort of withered and left. And for a very long time, 2XKO was poised to take the throne. Been in development for many years, some would argue far too many years, but it's been in development for a very long time. It's like, okay, there's just literally no tag fighters. Dragon Ball FighterZ is long gone here, so, here we are with Omega popular League of Legends franchise with a development team full of fighting game luminaries, and basically a sort of a dream team going on. The only thing you could really fault it for is they're seemingly too tied to perfection, and they're sort of perfecting themselves out of ever actually launching a game, because many would argue the game should have been out a long time ago. But people noticing there's a bit of a vacuum in the tag fighting space doesn't go unnoticed by just a single company, right? Many things happen years in advance. So what am I talking about exactly? This is not just a fighting game trend. People will see an open space, they'll smell blood in the water, they'll smell opportunity, they'll smell money, and then they'll say, me too. Sometimes it's just new ground, right? Like say, PlayerUnknown Battleground. That came out sort of a big deal, right? Took the world by storm, and then what happened, right? Well, this game worked, so now it's a lot of, well, me too. up to and including Fortnite literally stealing their formula and then, well, sort of doing it better than they ever did, I guess. So you can't argue with success. Conversely, say, look at Overwatch itself, just using the Street Fighter trailer because, hey, we're a fighting game channel. But Overwatch came out, did very well, and then people are like, well, me too, I want on that, but it takes a while. It doesn't happen right away. It doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? People got to go out and make the games. And eventually then you start getting the knockoffs. You got Paladins, and Paladins was pretty all right. But just like PlayerUnknown Battleground, you just get a lot of Me Too games. Okay, this was successful, and there's more room in the arena, right? So we are going to put our foot forward, but it takes years to make a game. And that's sort of now what's happening here on the tag fighter genre. A lot of people smelled that there was opportunity now that fighting games are much bigger than they have been in a very long time since the 90s. And in a genre, subgenre, tag fighters, that's been pretty empty since Dragon Ball FighterZ sort of exited stage left. And yes, 2XKO is a thing, but seemingly taking way too long to come out. So, a lot of people are like, you know what? We can put out a game as well. Then enter where we're at. Nen Impact was only announced last year, right? Obviously been in development for a while. They delayed the game too to make sure the launch will have stuff like rollback netcode. And Invincible Versus and Marvel Tokon just got announced. It's not like they just started development on that just like last week or something. Both these games have obviously been in development for a good long while. Everything happening all at once is effectively the delayed response. They all started working in secret. Now everyone's kind of announcing all at once. Because however many years ago it was, they looked at that piece of the pie, said we can take a piece of that pie, not realizing more people are going for it. And just like we had with Battle Royales, just like we had with hero shooters, now we're showing up with a bunch of people arriving at the same conclusion and all making their Me Too game. Because when you started, it looked like it was an empty playing field, right? There was no established Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat to fight against. It was maybe 2XKO will come out one day, but otherwise empty field, let's play. And it turns out 3 other people had that same thought. So that's sort of why we're at where we're at now. And of course, there's a lot of pedigree going on here, right? Arc System Works obviously is the makers of Dragon Ball FighterZ. They got some experience in this whole versus genre thing. This is the team that made the last successful tag fighting game that was around for many years and sold many millions of copies, was in tournaments all around the world, and did very well until a bunch of corporate mismanagement that frankly wasn't their fault. For Nen Impact, if you could say like, well, the Marvel Tokon people are the people who last sat on the throne, you could argue Nen Impact, this was their throne to begin with, because this is the team that made Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Of all the games that we're talking about, this is definitely the game that's least pretending to be an esport. This is absolutely going to be the dirtiest, grimiest of all these games. You're going to look at like something that's going to happen here, some sort of setup, and you're going to say, this is disgusting and unfair. And they'll say, yeah, that's the point. Thank you very much. Of all these games, I'm certain it has the smallest budget, but in a lot of ways, it's kind of got the truest heart to this whole versus game thing. For Invincible Versus, obviously the Invincible property is very hot in recent years, and this is also another old school team. This is the ex-Double Helix Killer Instinct developers making the game. And you could argue that's not tag fighter experience, I suppose, but still, it's fighting game experience, and they're bringing a Killer Instinct vibe to it. There should be a bunch of videos by the time this video is live, people dropping their gameplay impressions, and there's definitely some KI vibes going on here. And it's going to be hyper violent, hyper bloody, right? And with Mortal Kombat on ice again, and for the foreseeable future, probably because the next game is going to be Injustice, that definitely is filling a niche as well. And for 2XKO, well, it's Riot, right? They got the most money by a while. They got the biggest and best teams. Frankly, it's their ball to drop, which is part of why this is so interesting, because we went from a one-horse race to, 4 players in the game now real quick. So that's sort of how we got here, and like, who's going to win? Well, hey, time will tell. They're all kind of going for their own vibe. I will say Marvel Tokon is the only game that has traditional fighting game inputs. All other 3 games are going for easy inputs, like single button press special moves, all that kind of stuff. Marvel Tokon is going for a more classical fighting game experience with motions like quarter circle forwards, and all that sort of stuff. So right there, I think that'll win some hearts and minds of some more classical players. But then again, a lot of these games aren't looking for all the classical players, they're looking for all new players. And that's sort of why, simple controls has been all the rage. Of course, it's not quite as cut as dry as there only can be one winner, right? Like Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, Mortal Kombat, they can all exist independently with their own very large audiences and fan bases. So it's not like only one of these 4 games wins out and everyone else just goes away. But a little competition never hurt nobody either, right? So it will be interesting to see where this all goes. And of course, it's an uneven fight to a degree anyways, because Marvel Tokon and 2XKO are working on obviously wildly different budgets than Invincible Versus and Hunter Nen Impact are. But, the tale of a fighting game is not just told by the amount of money you can put into it. Although, to get all the way real, as one of the most ardent Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite defenders on the internet, y'all sure judged that game for not looking expensive enough, if you know what I mean. I remember how you talked about Chun-Li's face. Marvel Infinite was a beautiful game. Thank you very much. But yeah, the fight for the throne begins this year. So Marvel Tokon and Invincible Versus are both out next year. They're both out 2026. And 2XKO and Hunter Nen Impact are both out this year. Nen Impact comes out later next month in July. So it's actually not too far away. And 2XKO is sometime between now and the end of the year. October, November, December, probably. So I'm a fighting game guy, and I like being spoiled for choice. Too many fighting games is not a problem for me. I will be playing all of these games, to be sure. That said, I would like to put it to you guys, though. Where do your allegiances lie on this? Which game are you rooting for? You're only picking one? You're going to pick up a couple? Where you're at? What are your thoughts on it? Post in the comments below. But otherwise, my friends, that is the end of the video. So, thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Invincible Versus, some 2XKO, some Nen Impact, and some Marvel Tokon.